Good morning, everyone. My name is BJ Richards. I'm a senior analyst at Source, and this morning I'm going to be taking you through a quick look at this year's Source report on the GCC consulting market. Later today, my colleague Ed Haig will be presenting a webinar looking specifically at client perceptions of consulting in the region, so I hope you'll be able to join him too. We have a lot to get through this morning, so I'm afraid I won't be able to take questions at the end, but if you want to submit any questions you have in the chat box on your screen, we will get back to you. Also, some of my colleagues are going to be live tweeting the webinar under the hashtag SourceGCC, so please feel free to join in the conversation there. So Source is a research firm focused on the management consulting industry, and we offer a variety of subscription and custom products, as well as some consulting and advice services. This little graphic that we like to call our onion shows the various layers of what we do, and the research I'm presenting today is part of our core subscription offering, and you can see where it fits in among the rest of our offering right there. Now, of course, today we're talking about the GCC consulting market. We do these reports for about 15 markets around the world, looking at the state of those markets with sizing and growth numbers, forecasts for all major sectors and service areas, as well as a look at the various trends that are shaping those markets and the opportunities and challenges unique to each. Of course, doing this involves a lot of research. We talk to consultants and clients, the clients who hire them in all of these geographies. And in the GCC, this meant interviewing and surveying about 240 clients, very senior end users of consulting services, as well as pulling data from about 100 consulting firms and interviewing about 40 senior consultants, usually the most senior person in the country. And I'll just also note quickly here that all of our numbers, all of our research, we're talking about big consulting, or what we consider to be big consulting, which would be firms with at least 50 consultants globally who are serving mid-sized to large clients. So we're not talking about contractors or very small firms or work done for very small clients. We're looking at what we consider to be the more trackable part of the market. In the GCC, big consulting constitutes about 75% of the market, which we value at being worth $2.2 billion US and grew about 18% last year, so not bad. Now, in the report, we talk a lot about the GCC and the clients there being very much like adolescents. And I just want to be clear that I'm not saying that to mock them, but I'm really saying it with a lot of empathy, because this is a hard time, as we all know. When you're an adolescent, you're not a kid anymore, but you are constantly treated like one. And no matter how smart and sophisticated and resilient you prove yourself to be, the adults in your life simply refuse to treat you like you're one of them. And the worst part is that you kind of know this is true because you're still almost completely dependent on them for pretty much everything you need to survive. So it feels very unfair, it's very frustrating, and you have to put up with them even when you don't want to. Now this, of course, is not a fun time for the adults in this young person's life either. From their perspective, it's very clear that the kids are not as mature as they think they are, and it can be maddening that they suddenly feel so entitled. But the adult has to be careful here, because this is a dangerous time in this relationship. The adult is smart enough to value having a long-term relationship with the younger person, and they hopefully know that if they don't treat them in a way that feels fair to the adolescent, and they don't make the adolescent feel like they're being respected, then it's going to be hard to maintain this relationship in the future when maybe the adult wants this young person to be calling them. And we think this is a pretty good analogy for what's happening in the GCC right now. This is a market that is growing up. Political stability is increasing. Economic diversity is improving. The social situation is improving. This is an area, a geography that's becoming more global and more sophisticated. And from the client perspective, their more mature consulting partners are still treating them like children. This is actually a phrase they use when we talk to these clients. They come in here and they treat us like children, and it's very frustrating. A lot of clients in this market believe big consulting is treating the region like a cash cow, selling them cut-rate services at top-rate prices, offering them solutions that are not appropriate, that might work great in London or New York, but are not appropriate in the GCC. and they think that you know, the clients look at them and think they're so naive that they don't even know the difference between good consulting and bad consulting, and this is very frustrating to them. The consultants, of course, see things very differently. From their perspective, it's clear that this market is in many ways still quite immature. Clients don't know what they want, don't know what they need, don't understand the differences between the various types of firms. They want a lot for their money, and even when they get it, they're not really paying on time or in full. So very frustrating for the consultants as well. To the consultants, this is almost like a market that wants to be treated like a full-fledged adult but can't be bothered to keep its room clean quite yet, and that is maddening. But however frustrating it might be, consultants have to take these client demands, these client concerns very seriously. Again, like our young person, they keep coming back to consulting not because they like it, but because they don't have a lot of choices right now. And as this market matures, it's going to see its choices increase. And consultants that don't take them seriously now and don't show them the respect they're demanding are going to have a hard time getting their calls returned once the tables turn. So from the mood to the players, let's look at the countries we're talking about when we talk about the GCC. First up, Saudi Arabia. This is by far the biggest and fastest growing. As you can see, we have it valued at just shy of $1 billion US and grew just shy of 26% last year, so very big and fast moving. Big firms are investing big here. There's a lot of potential in this market. It's a much bigger economy than the UAE, for example, but it has a much less developed consulting market, so there's a lot of room to grow. There are lots of opportunities around oil and gas and financial services, lots of infrastructure investments happening. This is a market, however, that is significantly constrained by talent shortages. There aren't a lot of senior, experienced local consultants in this market. And this is a country where there's a lot of pressure, quotas actually, requiring the hiring of nationals, and so it can be tough to get the people that you need to grow the way you want. Next, we'll look at the UAE, which is second in size and growth rate, but definitely the leader in terms of maturity. The downside of all that maturity, of course, is that they felt the financial crisis a lot more than their neighbors, that they are recovering, if not recovered. Significance is high, investment is high. This is a very positive country right now. Enormous sums of money are going into nation-building efforts. I'm talking about diversifying the economy by making this a good place to do business and attractive to foreign investment. So a lot of effort going into that right now, manifesting largely as big infrastructure projects just to make this a better place to work, a better place to live, a better place to get around. There are also a lot of major events and other types of projects happening here, like the Smart Cities initiatives, Abu Dhabi 2030, Expo 2020, and those are things that are both generating investment in their own right and also just good for regional confidence, and so having a sort of secondary effect in terms of generating investment. Qatar is a distant third in terms of size and a not so distant third in terms of growth rate. The economy is doing very well here, and there's been an infusion of infrastructure investment, again a major theme in this region, and a lot of projects being done in anticipation of the World Cup. The downside to this market is instability that has resulted from some national leadership changes. It's acted as a bit of a curb on investment here. Moving on to the final three here in the GCC, Kuwait, Oman, and Bahrain. These are much smaller and much slower growing than their neighbors, but slow growth is very much a relative term in this part of the world. These are growth rates that are still very impressive, particularly when compared to much of the West. We see these countries as being a great opportunity for smaller firms. The bigger firms are investing elsewhere at this point. They're over there in Saudi Arabia. They want a part of that 26% growth per year. And they're not really going after these small markets so much anymore. So we see these as a great opportunity for smaller firms to swoop in and get some of this very lucrative work that the big firms just aren't chasing these days. Moving on from the countries to the sectors and services that were responsible for much of this big growth we're talking about. First up, healthcare. This is a small sector in the GCC, but it is growing like crazy. Everyone here is demanding better healthcare, both locals and expats. and the market's having to respond to that. Also, there's a lot of interest in making the GCC a destination for healthcare, particularly around cosmetic procedures, and this idea that you would come here to get European quality cosmetic surgery at local prices. And there's a lot of interest in developing that. And all of this means opportunities pretty much across the board in healthcare, everything from hospital infrastructure to IT to everything in between. Healthcare looks really good here right now. The public sector, of course, is the big behemoth of GCC consulting. It is the biggest sector by a big margin. It grew a lot last year, nearly as fast as healthcare. So very big and fast moving. It's really being driven right now by these nation-building efforts and these economic diversification and infrastructure development that I talked about earlier as part of trying to attract business and investment. This might be leveling off, which is not to say in any regard that it's going to be shrinking, and in fact will continue to grow, just we think it might be reaching a point where it's not going to be growing at quite the rate that it has been over the last few years. Financial services, also big and fast growing here, very important sector. They've come out of the financial crisis. Banks here are looking for growth. There's also a lot of regulatory compliance work and a burgeoning interest in technology transformation in this sector. Islamic finance is obviously important here and becoming more so, and it's also worth pointing out because it requires a very specialist skill set, and clients are telling us they're having a hard time finding consultants that are as conversant in Islamic finance as they would like. So that's a great opportunity for anyone who does have that very specialist set of skills. Services. Operational improvement, the big success story of last year in terms of growth. This is coming from clients' growth agenda. Clients are now doing their cost cutting in-house. They kind of have that figured out now, but they're still willing to shell out for external experts when it comes to their growth strategy. Program management is also very important here just because there are a lot of very big projects happening here and they need people who know how to run them. Technology is already the biggest service area, and it grew almost as much as operational improvement last year. And it's already doing a swift business in more classical IT, but now clients are becoming more interested in new tech and digitization. There's a shift taking place in the GCC with regard to technology, where clients are finally coming around to this idea of technology as a driver of change and not just an enabler of it, which is a really big shift that's opening up a whole new avenue of business in a service area that was already doing quite well. So that's very exciting. Also, I'll just flag up the Smart Cities Initiative, Smarter Cities Initiative that's happening, which is generating work in its own right, but there's also a hope that these sorts of big public projects will be inspirational in a way, that businesses will look at them and see the possibilities, and that it will also drive work that way too. HR and change management is the smallest service area in the GCC, but it is quick growing. We already talked about how consulting firms feel constrained by their talent challenges, but their clients have the exact same issues, and they're coming to consulting firms for help. So talent management and career development are very important here. This is a problem that's not going away really until today's young people reach middle age. So this will be around for a long time. Unfortunately, right now there is a lot more problem than solution. So it is a tough area, but it's one with a lot of interest for anyone who wants to try to tackle that. So that's the year that was. What can we expect from 2014? Looking for that, we're going to turn now to some of our client research to see what clients say about their plans for the year. So the first thing is we ask them, what projects are you planning? We came to them with 12 different categories that you see on your screen here. As you can see, they're kind of broad and wide-ranging. They go from increasing efficiency up at the top, down to managing risks, cutting costs, cultural change, 12 broad areas. And most clients say they are planning projects in all of these areas. In fact, 10 of the 12 have at least 80% of clients saying they're going to be doing something in these project areas. So this is a very busy and ambitious market. At the top of the pile, as you can see, is productivity and efficiency, with a whopping 94% of clients saying they're going to be doing something in that area. And I think that gets even more interesting if you look down a few spots, quite a few spots actually, to the need to cut costs, which 81% of clients say they'll be looking at. Now, 81% obviously is quite a very strong majority of clients, so this is a very popular service area, but it's down 8% over last year. It's big, but it's shrinking now. So what we take from that is that when clients here talk about efficiency, their number one concern, they're talking about doing more, not spending less. And then that is backed up by number 2 on the list, growth. 91% of clients say they're looking at growth initiatives that is substantially more than their global peers. So yeah, very ambitious market, very confident, doing more, getting bigger, really moving forward. So that's what everyone's going to be doing, but what is actually going to result in consulting work? And here we find what I think might actually be the most interesting finding in all of this year's research. Now, to start, I'm going to explain this somewhat confusing graphic very quickly. On the bubbles you see, each of the bubbles is one of those 12 service areas, one of those 12 project types, rather, that we just talked about, merger acquisition, increasing opportunities. So those are the ones we've already talked about. And the x-axis and the purple numbers, those are the numbers we just talked about. How many clients say they're doing something in this project area. Now the green numbers and the y-axis, that's the new stuff on this slide. That is, if you're planning a project in this area, do you then plan to bring in consultants to help with it? And this is very interesting because, as you can see, everyone has a lot planned, but they're not necessarily saying they're going to bring in consultants to help with it. In fact, only 3 of these project types see more than 50% of clients saying, we're doing this and we're hiring consultants to help. Now, the numbers here taken together, this is a lot lower than what their global peers are saying in terms of their interest in bringing consultants to help with their projects. A lot lower than their global peers, and a lot lower than last year. And last year, the numbers were higher in the GCC, so much higher that last year they were actually higher than their global peers. So this is really quite the reversal from last year. So what is that? That's a big shift. What is going on? The first thing I would say is that it would be pretty easy to just write this off as an anomaly. It's clear from clients' other answers in our survey and in our interviews that this is not a group that's about to abandon consulting en masse. They even say their spending is going to go up next year. Obviously, they're going to spend that money on something, so there's no need to panic. They're still going to be buying consulting. But we would caution very strongly against dismissing these findings. We don't think this can be ignored either, because what we see here is a bit of a protest vote. We see our petulant teens saying, we don't need you anymore, even if clearly that is not true. And I would just remind you, this is not a group that's buying consulting because they're so thrilled with what they're getting. This is a group that's buying consulting because they don't have any choice. They have big ambitions and no other way to accomplish the things they want to accomplish, and so they keep coming back even if they don't really like it. I think my favorite quote in this year's report was a client who told us, I'm sick of paying $2,000 a day rates and getting a $300 a day guy. And I think that kind of sums up how a lot of clients feel in this market. And this is something that has to be taken seriously, because back to our analogy about our young people, this is a market that's becoming more sophisticated. They're going to have more options. They're going to have more places to go. And so consultants that are doing well now and want to hold on to their market share when that day comes, when they have more options, need to start fixing this perception problem now, this perception of $2,000 a day for the $300 a day guy, or it's going to be very hard to get your calls returned in a few years. So what are the opportunities? Those are the concerns. What are the opportunities where consultants can go forth and prove their worth in this somewhat skeptical market? The first thing we would point to is specialization, and this goes back to maturity, quality, and the desire, the very strong desire this region has to get a better quality of consulting than what they're currently seeing. When this was a younger market, and really when any market is a younger market, it's pretty easy for consultants to skate by giving very generalist services and have clients be thrilled for whatever help they're getting. The GCC is past that point. That is not going to cut it here anymore. Clients here want quality services of the type that they see happening in Europe, they see happening elsewhere, and so really demanding, really want to see specialization. Now, of course, this is a good opportunity for small firms, which you tend to think of as having these very niche offerings. But it's also a great opportunity for big firms that have the ability to call in the world's foremost expert on whatever is needed to come into the region and consult here. So it's an opportunity, a slightly different type of opportunity, but an opportunity for big and small firms alike. Next, outcome-based pricing. Now, I imagine a lot of you are sitting in front of your computers rolling your eyes right now because we hear a lot of interest in outcome-based pricing, but it often doesn't work. But we're hearing that in this region, it is making some headway. We're hearing that from both consultants and clients, and so it needs to be taken seriously here. This is a market where expectations are high and fees are low. Mostly when you're dealing with local clients, they want a lot, they don't want to pay a lot, and they don't want to pay a lot because they don't like what they're getting. It creates a lot of price pressure, a lot of price competition, and that in turn makes investment hard for firms because they aren't making rates that are at a level that will allow them to make the investments they need to make to become the types of consulting firms that the client market says it wants. And so it's sort of a vicious circle between low rates and the ability to invest and the ability to produce what the market says it wants to see. So this is sort of being seen as a middle ground. It's a way to command fees that will permit investment while giving clients some assurance that these bigger fees will get them the type of consulting they keep saying they want. Now, it's a tough thing to pull off, as we all know. Clients say they want this, but then when they start looking at the details, it feels like betting against yourself. You're going to have to pay a lot more if this is successful, which feels like a negative thing. Sometimes these conversations break down around the difficulty of measuring success. How are we going to agree on what will trigger bigger fees at the next level? And frankly, doing outcomes-based pricing could just require more trust and experience than exists in this market at the moment. So we are not saying this will be easy or that it's for everyone, but it's something that we're hearing is working here and an opportunity that's worth considering. Implementation projects, again, tied up in this market's hunger to get things done and their lack of in-house capacity and skills to do it. This is a move away from pure strategy and towards big implementation projects. Of course, this can be tough for strategy firms, many of which have built a pretty comfortable place for themselves offering a pure strategy offering. But we see this overall as being a very good opportunity. It's bigger projects, bigger fees. It's a chance to really show your value. You know, if you deliver pure strategy, you might not see the returns on it for a decade. And by the time you do see the returns, I think sometimes clients wonder if it can really be traced back to that bit of strategy work we did 10 years ago. Here, you go in, you come up with a solution, you implement that solution, it starts to pay off, and it's clear the link between what you did and the value the client is seeing. This is also a great opportunity to build relationships in a market where relationships are enormously important. Clients tell us that they want to work with the same consultants again and again. So if you go in and you build a good relationship and you do good work for them, you have a very good chance of being their go-to client or go-to consultant. So this is a great opportunity, including for strategy firms, many of which are now starting to reach down and offer these types of services alongside their strategy offerings. And we see this as a big trend in the market. And finally, I would point to sustainability, which is sort of a new interest in this market that's coming from a couple of different places. Excuse me. The first is just pure research conservation and specifically energy conservation, which might sound a little ironic to some of us in the West, but to the extent that energy is being used in the GCC at a rate that prevents it being available for export, it's a very real concern, being more energy efficient here, and governments are investing big in being more resource efficient so that there is more available for export. Also, another driver, and some would say actually the bigger driver in this case, is this is coming from the multinationals that are entering the market and investing. These multinationals come into the GCC and they show up with sustainability mandates from their home offices that they have to follow wherever they are in the world. And so they come here and they have to be green here as they are everywhere else. The World Cup is a great example of this. FIFA has very high standards for sustainability, and the World Cup is going to be a huge green event in this region. This is a great opportunity for Western firms. They have decades of experience at doing this in their home markets, and so it's largely a matter of just coming in and showing what you've done elsewhere and what your capabilities are in the sustainability realm. And so that's it. That is the 30-minute version of the report. I hope I kept it to around 30 minutes. There is, of course, a lot more in the report. If you'd like to know more or you have questions, please do be in touch with Jody Davis. You can see her contact information on your screen, obviously. Jody is our woman on the ground in the GCC, and she'd be happy to answer any of your questions. And then also, of course, you can submit questions in your chat box on your screen, or take part in our Twitter conversation that's happening. And we would love to hear from you. And just a reminder that in about 30 minutes, my colleague Ed Haig is going to be leading a discussion based around client perceptions in this region. So if that interested you, hopefully you'll stick around for that as well. Thank you so much. Have a great day.